All right, welcome everyone. I'm here with John Longhill, and we're talking about a paper that he just wrote. John, give us a little background on yourself for the folks that don't know who you are.
My name's John Longhill. I'm an EXO advisor and coach. I'm a certified NCS consultant, which is NeuroChange Solutions with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and also a heart math trainer. I'd like to introduce you to a white paper I wrote entitled Artificial Intelligence as a Mirror of Human Consciousness, along with my friend and colleague Salim.
Let's go through the paper. I have a whole bunch of questions around it.
Okay, the information in this white paper deals with how to leverage AI with the proper mindset, specifically how to use it to get the most effective results. And this white paper explores artificial intelligence not as a standalone intelligence, but as a reflective tool of human consciousness, drawing on neuroscience, quantum theory, and experiential learning. It frames AI as a mirror of our thoughts, beliefs, and our emotional frequency, rooted in a philosophy of positive intention, which I define as intelligent, life-affirming energy. And this
Okay.
work presents that AI can be a catalyst for human transformation, personal growth, and collective evolution if we engage with it consciously. Through serious, I've got sections on emotional intelligence, quantum awareness, and leadership, and I build to a mindset manifesto for an ethical, creative, and life-affirming AI development.
So one of the big challenges I always run into, and we always do, is, as Ray Kurzweil said, language is a really thin pipe to discuss topics as complex as consciousness. How do you define consciousness? Do you have a clear sense of what it is?
Levels of consciousness has to do with levels of awareness. It's like fish in the ocean. You've got all the fish at different levels of the ocean. You got the fish on the very bottom in the dark that don't have a lot of awareness of the world because they're in the dark. But as they
Yeah.
move up into the ocean, there's more light, there's more awareness, and there's more experience. So I'm talking about consciousness as awareness.
Artificial intelligence has an awareness.
And it's based
Okay.
on human intelligence because it's a reflection of human intelligence.
If you take all the feedstock that have trained all the AI models, most common amongst that is something called the Common Crawl web crawler, which goes around sucking up information across the internet, etc. A lot of that is, say, tabloid sleaze and pretty dumb commentary, celebrity worship, etc. And in there also, you've got deeply thoughtful scientific papers and all the scientific research, clinical trial results that are all published, etc. I think a big question I would have is in order for it to reflect human consciousness, it definitely is a reflection of human expression. All the stuff that we've said and done and spoken, YouTube videos with people talking about how cute their cats are. I'm struggling to see the map from what people have expressed and put out on social media where everybody's trying to look good onto as an accurate reflection of human consciousness. How do you think about that?
It's limited awareness. It's a
Yeah.
limited consciousness. Just when you look at a stone, it has atomic structure and it has an awareness because it has electrons, it has neutrons, and all kinds of aspects, and it's vibrating at a certain frequency, which creates its reflection as a stone. So it has awareness at that level, which is a very limited awareness. And as you move up the biological ladder, you have animals and mammals and humans, and you have a greater awareness because you have free will, you have the ability to move, you have
Agency. Okay.
agency.
So, in your worldview, the universe is conscious down to a stone having a limited amount of consciousness or call it awareness. And then a dolphin has a lot more than a stone type of thing.
Right. And even
Okay.
quantum theory proves that the existence that we're experiencing in the three-dimensional reality is actually energy waves, and it becomes particle
Yeah.
through awareness and observation.
Yes. Yes. The old Schrodinger's cat
Double slit theory.
double slit. My God. By the way, have you ever seen the delayed quantum choice experiment video?
No, tell me.
On YouTube, there's an 11-minute video. It's called the Delayed Quantum Choice Experiment. And if you ever want to mess with somebody that thinks they understand quantum mechanics, just point to this video because what they do is you've got two electrons coming through the different slits, right?
Yes.
And in this delayed quantum choice thing, what they do is they put a deflector on one of the electrons through in one of the gaps. So the electron bounces and they put another mirror and it bounces this way. And they basically put it through a little bouncing back and forth before it hits the end screen. So the two electrons come, but this one gets delayed compared to this one. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out, if you look at the full implications of that, that when this deflected electron was initially created 4 billion years ago, it knew that it would be deflected at the end of its journey. And not to know that, you essentially break time in a gross way. And you're like, okay. So I have fun with that because I ran across physicists who go, yeah, I understand quantum mechanics. Like, go watch that and let's have a conversation. And it breaks their mind. Anyway, I understand the thesis, or at least where you're coming from there. The universe as being aware is definitely one of the models by which people talk through consciousness, right?
Yes.
So from an awareness perspective, I can understand how if you look at all the stuff that humanity's published, there's definitely an awareness that comes from that, at least awareness of what people are thinking, saying, doing, whatever. And you've got the full spectrum of all that stuff. And the beauty of generative AI is you can deal with that mass amount in some reasonable way. But then you talk about the lens of the mirror effect. So here you're saying that the what we're getting out of these AIs is essentially a reflection of human nature as a collective consciousness. One question that pops up immediately, to which I think I know how you would answer it, is you're getting a particular slice of human expression when you take the Common Crawl Foundation and load it up into ChatGPT, and that's becomes a training model. Because you have what's called the garbage in, garbage out problem. If you train a model on just the perspective of left-handed Lithuanian folk dancers, then the model is skewed towards the perspective of that. And but I think what your answer would be is given the whatever the level of accuracy the data that the engines are trained on, to that extent you get the mirror effect. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, it just has to be there.
Right. And obviously, we're approaching AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is when it matches the total capacity of human knowledge.
My beef around that, right?
What?
I have a bit of a rant. I'm actually working with Ramez now to formalize this into a little bit of a paper myself with Ramez, which is we're talking about AGI. At last count, I counted 14 different definitions of people saying this is what AGI is. We don't have a definition for it. We don't have a test for it. And we don't seem to be have any clarity as to what we mean by AGI, even amongst the researchers in the field. So that's the challenge. Again, it's a definition problem, right? But how do you define AGI? And what framing do you?
Landscape architecture. And it has, so that's AGI for landscape architecture because it has matched the entire capacity of human awareness at that point. I think AGI will never be complete because we're not complete. We're continually evolving. It gets closer and closer to matching the race of evolution, so to speak. And it's not quite up to the level that we're evolving yet, but it's getting close. It's catching up. And I think it's going to get to a point where it is moving as fast as us, and it may move faster than us when it has its own agency.
It turns out there's about a dozen facets of intelligence. We have the two obvious ones that the IQ test measures, which are the speed of thought processing and the ability to match concepts across frameworks. But then you have emotional intelligence and spatial athletic intelligence and linguistic intelligence. Some people have musical intelligence. You have the Eastern concept of presence or awareness and the whole hard problem of consciousness, the idea of we have subjective experiences and we can't copy or store that in any real meaningful way. And I think it was David Chalmers who defined that as the hard problem of consciousness. The I have an issue when people talk about AIs becoming conscious because I don't think we know, or sorry, intelligence, because if I'm a leader, a lot of my decision making involves emotional intelligence. And AIs don't do any of that. At least they may mimic it, but they don't really have emotions. How do you deal with that? And then my second beef is that when they talk about what's called a technological singularity, the idea is that can when an AI can outpace human intelligence, right? Now, the minute I can prescriptively describe a task, an AI or robot's going to do it much better than me anyway. So what are we talking about? So I disagree with it on the what do we mean by it part and also on the overtaking part. So I've got two issues, sets of buckets of issues that I've not seen reasonably addressed around
Well,
this.
there's, what did you say? How many intelligences?
About a dozen as
A
far as I
dozen.
can see.
But truthfully, there's really almost an infinite number of intelligence because
Is that too? Absolutely
you have all
intuitive.
these different intelligences. But dealing with our mental intelligence obviously includes emotional intelligence. And what emotional intelligence is basically being able to manage the refractory period of the chemicals that are injected in the body based on a stress response. You have a fear-based response, you get pumped these neurotransmitters to neuropeptides that hit all your, especially your adrenal center, and now you're ready to run, fight, or hide. And the ability to be conscious of that and regulate your response is what we
Yeah.
call emotional intelligence.
Okay. So let me reflect back to what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is, okay, it's great to talk about emotional intelligence, but those are emotions are essentially subroutines in the brain. Or if I punch you, you're going to have a natural reaction to punch me back or sue me if you're in the US or whatever.
Right.
And that's a programmed response. We have free will and have some agency on what the response is. I remember Viktor Frankl saying the difference between animals and humans is that humans, given a stimulus, have the power to choose their response, whereas an animal just responds by programmatic instinct, in a
Right.
sense. If
And
that's an emotional intelligence, if you poke a dog, it's probably going to bite you. And that's a programmed emotional intelligence that gets angry and then it bites you. Whereas we'll get angry and sue you or whatever the response is, a high order response. Is that the same case as, say, spiritual intelligence or awareness or the Eastern concept of presence, which is more of a contemplative thing and it's not programmatic in a sense? Because it doesn't necessarily result in outward behavioral change. I think we get lost in the language and terminology here. But if I talk about emotional intelligence specifically, you're basically saying that, look, that's just as programmed as anything else is. And I can see the validity of that.
right,
That's
you could build a
issues.
robot that responds the same way. Basically, you
Yes, you
could
could.
you could program it to respond to run, fight, or hide, or to respond with balance and awareness. But again, you have to have a body and you have to have a stimulus for that body to add that level of awareness
And maybe
to,
some level of memory to keep it in the body,
exactly,
right?
to know how to
Okay.
respond to similar situations.
Okay. So those are the different types of intelligences, etc. Then you're basically focused on awareness as the key vector through this paper, right? Or awareness or attention, or is it the same thing to you?
Well, it's similar because you have to have intention and put your attention on the intention to move forward with a choice, with an action and behavior, and then to create an experience.
Okay. Look, I have a view that what we're building in AI is a complementary intelligence to human intelligence. Let me explain. What I mean by that is we are uniquely evolved over 4 billion years to do two things, to survive and procreate, right? Much of our intelligence is about how do you navigate the physical world to maximize the functions of survival and procreation. That's basically been largely why we've developed whatever intelligence we have. If you accept that to some extent, then you take PageRank, Google's web crawler that crawls trillions of web pages, right? It's evolving a separate type of intelligence to crawl billions of web pages at the same time and make sense of it and give weights to different websites depending on various factors. And I would argue that's complementary to human intelligence, not replicative of it. We're
Okay.
never going to go crawling billions of web pages at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. We don't have the sensory or cognitive capacity for that. Google can do that. And that intelligence is separate from human intelligence, but it has its own intelligence nonetheless. If you extend that analogy, then generative AI is doing a similar thing. It's generating a type of intelligence that is, in my opinion, complementary to human intelligence. Although it looks like it's doing the same thing, it's very different. Would you agree with that framing?
Yeah, it's actually a reflection of how our brain works. You have the frontal lobe, which is like the CEO of the brain. That takes up 40% of your entire brain, and it's part of the neocortex. You have an idea, and you want to pursue that idea. I want to be wealthy, I want to be healthy, or whatever. So then the frontal lobe searches the entire landscape of the brain, based and basically your brain is a autobiographical artifact of everything you've experienced and learned in your life. So it's looking for information to pull together to formulate a new idea, okay, about how I can become wealthy or how I can become healthy or whatever. AI is really an incredible opportunity for us to expand the landscape of our brain and expand our experience because now we can just go to AI and say, what's your experience in this realm? What's your,
Interesting.
and then all of a sudden we've got the ability to be more creative because we have more information and
Part I
make
buy
that
into just
landscape.
because you could load up all the accounting audits that a big four company has done. You take Pricewaterhouse or Ernst& and Young or Deloitte or KPMG, and you take all their accounting history and you load it up into an AI, you're going to have the world's best accountant with all the history of the different audits and a very good structured data, etc. Once you have that loaded up into an AI, that can be copied, and now every accounting team in the world can have the world's best accountant as a partner, right? Eric Schmidt talks about the same thing. If you took all the, say, the physics research papers ever published and loaded it up, you have the world's best physicist with a breadth of awareness that you would not get. There's another framing that I thought was very clever from Reid Hoffman, where he said one of the beauties about intelligence is you can cross disparate ideas together. And that's one of the hallmarks of that, taking something from one domain and applying it to another, right? And he said, if you take somebody that's the world's best marine biologist, they have a certain set of knowledge. Then you take somebody that's the world's best accountant, and they have a different sphere of knowledge, right? Then you take somebody that's the world's best interior designer, right? Now, in a normal human being, you will never ever cross those three domains. You'll never get somebody that's a global expert in accounting and in marine biology. But an AI could actually do that and start mashing ideas together at deep levels of expertise that you would never see in a single human being.
And that's
And that's a
intelligence,
very powerful idea to think about the future. That is a whole level of intelligence. Agree.
which has
Wow.
the awareness at that level of having access to all of that knowledge. Doesn't mean it's
Yes.
alive, doesn't mean it has free will, doesn't mean it's human. No, it just means it has an awareness, black and white, that it can
So
access and integrate.
basically, what you're saying in this then is you can use the AI to lift our consciousness and allow all of us to vibrate at a higher level.
Yeah, because it's
Right?
expanding our experience.
Yep. Okay. Now, you talk about having a policy where you regulate this and provide some ethical frameworks around what the AI can or can't do. And I understand the rationale for it, but I struggle with how you would implement something like that. There are two things that happened with OpenAI that Google, well, the reasons that Google did not release their LLM and generative AI models were they basically had two caveats. One was don't let it out on the open internet, and B, don't let it write its own software. And ChatGPT basically broke both of those and opened up a Pandora's
Right.
box, right?
Very
And now we
quickly.
have AIs crawling all around the internet and writing their own code. If I have a screwdriver, then great. I'm manipulating the screwdriver to achieve an outcome, right? But the screwdriver does not have its own intention or its own, it's not conscious and does not have agency on its own. Okay. So that's fine as a passive tool. But when AI can write its own code and decide to choose its own objective functions, then you've got a whole other animal on your hands.
So that's why we have to mandate ethical intentions, right?
Yeah.
Again, this is just another evolution of the human species, but everything that we've ever done, when the invention of firearms. You can use that to kill people or you can defend your country and or do both, right?
Yeah.
And then we came up with the Geneva Convention and all the rules about war and things like that. Sometimes it's followed, sometimes it's not. And AI is just another tool.
The old metaphor of I can use fire to heat my house and I can use it to burn down your house. Which do I
Exactly.
choose?
So that's
It-
always going to be there because that's the nature of humanity, right?
yeah.
That's how we evolve is by creating civilized behavior so that we can survive amicably and live longer, procreate more, and expand our species. So we're
Okay.
just dealing with another ethical dilemma, but it needs to be defined. It needs to be thought about. And
Who do you propose does that thinking and detailing out the different aspects of it?
I think the primary has to be with society, and the biggest part of society is business and how we interact with each other through business. Certainly, then it becomes a something that we push for laws and ordinances and way that it's so there is some regulation that certainly needs to happen because left to our own devices without regulation, we tend to not do well.
Yeah. So you need some sort of guardrails around it. The question I have, and I've actually said this publicly, is I see no mechanism by which you could enforce or police what AIs are doing or how they're programmed. Like you'd have to regulate every line of code written.
Yeah, there's not something you can keep track of it, the paper, and that's just a way to
So
define.
therefore, then people can voluntarily choose to be following those guidelines or not.
And life is a volunteer operation, right? We volunteer or don't volunteer depending on what we want to experience.
Right,
And so again, it's only going to draw people that feel like this is important in their life.
right,
And just like EXO has drawn a community of people that see the value of running businesses that way, this is just a mindset to be
right.
conscious of artificial intelligence so it
So
creates positive things.
in terms of implementation, then your best hope would be to get this out into every AI researcher's hands and they do some deep thinking about the ethical frameworks and pillars that they want to sit on
Yeah,
and
not just
build their
developers, but investors and users.
yeah,
There's really
constituencies that are around there.
three groups. The purpose of this paper is for investors, developers, and users, because
Right.
those are the people that are involved with how it's developing.
So is that your highest hope for something like this? Is that people read it and basically self-select to following the pointers that are in the paper?
This is just the first step. This is like the first baby step, stepping out into the ethers and saying, we need to look at this not with fear, but with opportunity, the
Right,
opportunity to create a better human experience, just like anything we've ever developed in terms of technology. It's about creating a better human experience, moving us out of survival and into creation. Our whole planet has been, it was all about survival as a
yes,
species for hundreds of thousands of years. We developed technologies and built houses to keep us safe and developed governments to keep us even safer. And now we've got technologies that allows us to stay warm when it's freezing outside, to go wherever we want to go, whenever we want to go, safely, without restriction. And all the technologies that are happening right now that are converging are all about that. Make
yeah,
us have even more time to ourselves so that we can be more creative and we can focus on things because when we're in survival, you can't be creative. You're
right.
going to run, fight, or hide, and that's not a time to be creative. So you eliminate the survival stimuli,
Hmm.
the human being moves into creation, and then we truly become creators of our destiny.
I guess the question is the one next step would be to create some forums to discuss this in a bit of detail and go through the different aspects of it. Maybe we do that with our OpenEXO group first and then see who else wants to get involved with
Yeah,
something.
I think Kent has a good framework for that. It's about using Socratic dialogue to flesh it all out. And so we've been talking about that and coming up with an outline, and it would be wonderful to have you and maybe even Peter Diamandis on the.
Yeah, definitely. Let me bounce this off Kent. Let me pass this around with our pro membership at least,
Okay.
and then we can see who wants to get involved in a further kind of discussion about it. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, this is just scratching the surface, this white paper.
Very much. Each one of these could be, we could spend hours. I wanted to have you go through some of the mindset manifestos.
Okay.
I'm just going to run through these, and I would love to for you to just talk for a minute or so each on what these are and what you're trying to achieve with them.
Okay.
So the first one, we recognize AI not as an independent being, but as a mirror of our collective conscious.
It reflects our questions. It reflects our beliefs, our fears, our hopes, and it's shaped by the frequency of our thought. Frequency is information. And so it is a complete reflection of who we are. So the key here is to be responsible of who we are when we interact with artificial intelligence and be responsible for what we create as an outcome when working with artificial
Right.
intelligence.
Second one, we commit to engaging with AI from a mindset of creation rather than survival. We talked a bit about this, but say a little bit more about that.
Again, it's about choosing curiosity over control. Control is about the stress response, like when we
Yeah.
don't feel like we're in control, and having compassion over our competition, and creation over fear,
Yep.
and using AI, engaging with AI at that frequency, a frequency of creation, not survival.
Third one, we think that AI is a tool for accelerating human evolution.
It helps us see our patterns. It can help us rewire our beliefs and
Yeah.
imagine futures we've never dared to consider because, again, it has expanded that landscape of our brain, giving us more experiences, more possibilities to purview and to
Hmm.
use as part of our creative process.
We choose to use AI as a tool for reflection and life enhancement.
But so valuable in supporting healing. Like doctors in their capacity are going to cease to exist. They're still going to be able to be human and heal as a human. But in terms of diagnosis, AI is going to be so far beyond any individual doctor. Healing and then learning, exploration, and joy of living by
Right.
designing solutions that elevate the well-being of all.
Which kind of speaks to the next one, which is you call for conscious AI development practices that are life affirming.
Yeah, it includes ethics informed by empathy, transparency, informed by trust, and governance informed by wisdom. I don't think AI has wisdom. We have wisdom because we can look back on a past experience, and if we can get the value out of that experience, we gain the wisdom from that experience.
We believe in the integration of AI with experiential intelligence of human awareness.
Humans, nature, and machines can co-create these powerful learning fields when they're united through conscious intent. So
Hmm.
again, it's having a unified intention and putting our attention on that intention until we've accomplished the goal.
There's the integration of AI with the experiential intelligence of human awareness. How do you integrate that into experiential intelligence?
Again, you're creating these learning fields when you interact with AI, and you're having the conscious intent to create an outcome. And this is what AI has the power to mirror back to us because it's going to expand our ability to expand these learning fields.
Interesting idea. Okay. We accept the responsibility of co-creation.
Again, we shape AI and it shapes us. Continual process. It's already doing that, right?
The feedback loop of that is incredible.
That's the value that's really happening with AI. And if we commit to evolving ourselves with that same urgency in which we evolve our technology, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think this is the big issue is that AIs are moving at a very fast pace and we are definitely not.
And that's our responsibility to
Yeah.
evolve our awareness and our ability to co-create with AI.
And the final one is you affirm the future of AI is not inevitable, which I think is exactly the right point to make given all this stupid Matrix and Star Wars and whatever scenarios that people are throwing out there.
We can choose to create with love, kindness, and compassion, or hate, fear, and aggression.
Yeah.
And that's always been the human condition. Are we going to operate in survival or are going to operate in creation? And certainly, some people are operating in survival because that's all they got. But the choice is dependent on the circumstances that people are dealing with. And if the circumstances are putting people in survival, they're going to use AI for destructive things because they're running, fighting, or hiding, right? In that
Yeah.
situation. But again, if you're operating with love, kindness, and compassion, AI will be a reflection of that.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we record pause the recording, shoot it around to our community members, and then we'll do a group call on this.